What's happening, Awesemo baseball fans? We've got a gigantic slate of baseball action to deal with today. 15 games up on deck tonight. Going to be a fun one to talk about. Terry McBride, I'm here with your pal Gundacker. Gun, what's going on, man?
Good morning. Happy Friday. 15 games, the max.
Yeah, man. They're not going to cram any more than this in without inventing a couple new teams. So this is definitely going to be a fun one. Loaded up this morning. It's a good-looking slate, too. I'm psyched to get into this one. Thought we had a pretty good day on the show yesterday. You and I both nailed our home run picks. I thought we were going to go 3 for 3 if we got that Adam Dunn one that Aton threw in there, but not bad, not bad. How'd your night go last night overall?
Really good. So, like, for anybody missed it, we got the Vince Velasquez news on the air, that okie doke curveball, and we were able to adjust. Everyone in the live chat able to adjust, but depending on the contest I was in, he was 16 to 30% owned, which turns into rake free and or overlay at the end of the day. And it was, I basically ended up with 100% Smiley and Alcantara. I wish I had the stones to pitch Merrill Kelly, but I didn't.
I'm with you. Yeah. When I sorted, I made a mistake in my own sorting when I went to take Velasquez out. That changed the distributions, and I needed to tweak Alcantara to get an even distribution of the two of them. So I ended up with not enough Alcantara on the night, which really kind of shot me in the foot. But yeah, I wish I had had the guts to roll with some Merrill Kelly there too. So, guys, we appreciate you jumping in here. We're going to go through every single game, so we're going to fly through some of these promos, some of the plugs that we usually do. You guys are here every single day, or hopefully you are. If you're not, start joining us every single day and hanging out for these shows that we do. We've got them all day long. But if you miss a show, if you're looking to catch up on a big slate like this, catch up on all the strategy show. If you missed the NBA show, those guys went for over an hour talking about one game. We're going to do the opposite here. We're going to go for an hour talking about 15 games and fly. But you can get all these different shows on your favorite podcast network. We're running a little contest. Once a week, we're giving away a free week of Awesemo Plus. Get in there, leave us a 5-star review. That qualifies you for the raffle. We grab random names in there. We raffle it off once a week. So hit us with a 5-star review. Download our podcast from your favorite podcast network. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Helps us out a ton, you guys. Gives you a little notification when things are coming up, new shows are coming on. You won't miss a thing. We've got free top stacks for MLB at the site today, so get in there, check those out. It's the best tool in the industry for building baseball lineups. We're giving that away on a 15-gamer that's got 100K up top for Fanduel today, 50K up top for DK today. You can't find a better free tool in the industry than that. We've also got free NBA player rankings for the one-gamer. We've got free NHL projections, the full-blown projections. We got free MMA ownership up today. Like and subscribe. Hit the site for all that stuff. Gun, we talked about we've got a big 15-gamer. Any thoughts in terms of strategy that you want to call out for a 15-gamer that would be different from a tiny slate like last night? Or do you want to just jump into any weather standouts that you see? Take it wherever you want to.
Yeah, so the first two things I look at, 15 games, you feel like there's always some weather, but from what I'm looking at, I don't see any weather concerns to speak of. Maybe we'll keep an eye on that. Weather does change. And the other thing is, if you played last night, some of you guys that are coming over from NBA, one game gets you off it. Last night is a little bit of an outlier. You're not going to have 60% owned pitchers tonight, and you're not going to have likely 40 to 50% owned stacks or even players. So tonight it's going to be a little bit more spread out. Maybe not obscene chalk, maybe a couple of guys floating the 20s, but for the most part, you can, if you're MMA 100, 150 max, and you don't have to get overly aggressive and maybe 10, 15%ers on your favorite stacks and 8% or less on your average stack. So last night to tonight, it's about it doesn't get much different, right? 4 games to 15 games, end cores, like it's a big jump in MLB Dfs variant. So that's probably what I would say is, baby steps here, but tonight's a monster.
Yep, absolutely. You mentioned that we've got the Coors game on deck. We've got some decent totals up and down the board. So it's an interesting looking slate. We've got some good pitching to work with. So yeah, we're going to be all over the place in this one. But I think it's important to hammer home, the idea that on a slate of this size, we want to be primarily focusing on full stacking and getting to, at least big chunks of 2 specific teams and trying to capture that upside, capture that range of outcomes. Because on a slate this size, we're at a much better chance that 2 teams are going to run off and hide with their totals, and you're going to want to capture that correlation. So in this kind of a slate, are you more willing to look almost exclusively at like full stack combinations, or are you still kind of mixing in some one-offs and maybe grab 2 one-offs and put it into like a 3-3-2 kind of a setup? What's your approach to stacking on this slate?
So in mass field tournaments, yeah, I'm definitely selling out for stacking. We give up the floor for the ceiling to get first place. But in single entry, stuff like that, I'm not as committed to the stack. I probably still want to gravitate towards a central team, but I do think it's a little bit more fun to cherry pick a couple one-offs for maybe some less than 400 entry single entries. But yeah, stacking is the way to go in big field. Throw that blanket over a team, net all their points, and hope they put up, like yesterday, the Giants put up 19 runs, I think, in the day slate. There's probably going to be a team like that today that drops double digits or multiple.
Yeah, and that's, we're going to need to capture that and capture as much of the correlated hitters within that as we possibly can while getting to hopefully some lower-owned different combinations that you get to. So definitely an interesting one to look at how everything's going to come together. I'm looking forward to starting to crunch lineups on this one. Got some interesting stuff coming up over the weekend too, Gun. Actually, you know what? Are you an NBA guy? Are you a basketball fan? Yeah, me too. So the beginning of this read starts with the NBA playoffs are almost here. Well, I don't really agree with that. I think we've been in the NBA playoffs. I'm counting the play-in tournament as the playoffs.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Doesn't that make sense? And I heard the other day that none of these stats are going to count from any of the play-in games. So, these don't count towards guys' playoff career stats or anything like that. It's weird. Why wouldn't this just count as the playoffs? So, anyway, the NBA playoffs are here, which means it's NBA showdown season. Like we talked about, the guys went for over an hour on one game earlier. Great news about that. We've got the NBA Weekly Express plan. It gives you full access to all of our tools for NBA showdown and single game content. Includes player projections and our ownership projections. That's $4.95 for the NBA Express Pass. When you sign up with our promo code PLAYIN, that's play-in, you get an extra week of NBA Express completely free. So it's a buy 1 week, get 1 week kind of a thing. It's 2 weeks of NBA Express for $4.95. That's going to get you through the play-in tournament. It's going to get you through a few games of the first round. Pretty solid deal. It's your chance to grab this deal. It expires today. Use the promo code PLAYIN at checkout right now. Like and subscribe, you guys. Time to get into this massive slate. I think it's a good spot to kick off with some Red Sox going into Philadelphia. Sox with Martin Perez on the hill. Phillies with Aaron Nola, 8.5 total. Phillies are favored, 4.68 implied runs for the Phils, 3.92 for the Sox. What are you liking in this one, Gum?
So first thing we noticed is the Red Sox are in the NL Park, going to lose that DH. Maybe see JD Martinez have to play the field if they want his bat here. I still think they're a strong team overall. We've seen them hit for great contact, great power, and we've even got some stolen base potential here. So even without the DH, I'm still looking at the Red Sox, but I would probably feel some type of way if they didn't have JD right there in the thick of things to really maybe complete that stack. Against Aaron Nola, I'm not going to go crazy with stacking against him because I do believe in Nola. Been pretty solid this year, 3.25 Sierra, swinging strike rate 12.2%, maybe a little lower than it was at last year, but he still looked just fine enough. So not a target I'm going after anyway, but I still want some Red Sox for their potential upside. On the Philly side, the projected lineup tonight so far it looks a lot better than what they rolled out yesterday. I don't think they got a run on the board yesterday against Alcantara. So usual suspects, Martin Perez, contact lefty, high Sierra, high XFIP. His ERA's performing better than those advanced metrics, but we all know what he brings to the table. High ground ball rate with a guy who's purposely pitching the contact. I do like chipping and chairing some power bats like a Rhys Hoskins, even a Bryce Harper I don't hate, but more so the righties here like a Hoskins, maybe a Bohm or somebody like that. Usually I look for a high power, high strikeout guy that I can offset with a guy like Martin Perez, but I don't really see that guy in this projected Phillies lineup. So I feel like this is one of those games where I'm cherry picking from early on. I'm probably not going to commit to a full stack because of the options, and then maybe a dab of Aaron Nola. I like his Fanduel price point, 9K, 11.6 on DK. I feel like he's got some strong responsibilities at that price point on a 15 gamer.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think that's really borne out in our top pitchers tool. I'm just taking a peek at that. We've got Nola ranked pretty well on both sites in terms of his probability of being one of the top starters. But in terms of the leverage, the ownership that he's drawing, way higher owned on FanDuel and dramatically cracking through his probability of being the top one pitcher. So he's looking like a better play on DK where you're paying up more for him, just given that extreme ownership. I still like him. I like him at 9,000. Don't love the spot against Boston here, but the FanDuel ownership is tough to get through at basically more than double his probability of success. So that's a tricky spot. We unfortunately can't waste too much time on it. We're probably already behind schedule, so we're going to jump over. We've got the Orioles with Jorge Lopez going against the Nationals. Steven Strasburg coming back off the IL after his shoulder soreness injury that landed him there. Shoulders are tricky for pitchers. It's something I always worry about. I'm not sure the length we're going to get on Stras, but it looks like Vegas isn't sweating it too much. Nat's pretty decent-sized favorite here, 5.02 implied runs, 3.59 for the Orioles. You willing to take any shots on Strasburg here against this Orioles lineup?
Man, we 8.3K on DraftKings for Strasburg is very, very tempting. We've only got 15 innings in the last 2 years. I feel like I'm going to wait and see here and maybe not expect him to go super deep here. I hate to miss out on an opportunity, 8.3K, especially against the Orioles team that does have an ability to be a decent strikeout matchup. But I don't think I touch him on FanDuel, and I'd probably have to meditate on DK at that price point, maybe get a better gauge on where his pitch count might be. Looks like he was throwing just under 90 pitches before he got put on the IL. I think until I see like his velo is back where it needs to be, I'm probably not going to get there. And then no Jorge Lopez. The Nats over a 5-run total. I think they're going to be the apple of a lot of eyes today. You can easily sell me on Trey Turner, Juan Soto, but we're seeing a resurgence here on the bats of like a Kyle Schwarber lately, hitting for power. And Jorge Lopez, definitely somebody that doesn't have incredible strikeout stuff and does allow some power. 213 home run per nine so far this season of lefties, and he's been well over 2 the last 3 seasons. So still a power spot. So maybe Schwarber stays hot.
Yeah, I like that call a lot, actually. I'm going to be looking at the Nats. The FanDuel ownership is actually somewhat friendly. You're getting Soto coming in around 25%, but Turner's only around 15, and then you get Josh Bell and Schwarber in. Josh Bell dramatically under-owned, actually. His ownership's up on the DK side because his price is only 3,600 over there at 35, given that he's a 176, 244, 361 hitter so far this year, creating runs 36% worse than average. He's not tracking much ownership for the FanDuel price, so I like building that in. If he's hitting 3 switch hitter, so you get him matchup proof once they chase Jorge Lopez, but hitting from the left side of the plate with some pop against Lopez there, I think he could be sneaky on the FanDuel side of things. Unfortunately, getting a ton of ownership on DK. But yeah, getting to that stack. And then I wouldn't necessarily sleep on like Starlin Castro down the bottom, Josh Harrison down the bottom. If you need to differentiate a little bit, need to save money a little bit, a couple professional hitters at worst. So I like some pieces of that Nat stack where you can get to it at different ownership. What about the O side of things? Any love for the Orioles lineup, particularly if we're thinking Strauss might not be long for this game? Coming in, they're losing the DH going into a National League park. No ownership, no expensive players in that stack.
Yeah, I mean, Trey Mancini, I'd probably fire him up against most anybody. Austin Hayes batting over 290 against righties last couple of years. Yeah, I think, this is one of those make a decision spots. If you're not going to play Strasburg, you got to ask yourself, why aren't you? You don't trust it. His velo didn't look solid before you got put in the IL. Since the beginning of last season, a Sierra xFIP well over 5. Yes, very short sample size, but there is a range of outcomes. If Strasburg isn't Strasburg, they can go out here and get beat up. And maybe not full stack in Orioles, but allowing some of these guys to make the mix here. Some really, really low own, like you might catch all these Orioles in the single digits. Trey Mancini probably being the field favorite, but even him, he's not going to garner him, especially at 5.3K on DK. So a couple one-offs here, but I'm probably not going to commit to a stack.
Yeah, I just noticed, actually, do we have if you grabbed your lineup from the same place I did, is Santander in your projected lineup?
I have him 5th, yeah.
Yeah. So that would be a bump to their offense if he's back. I hadn't noticed that he would be back.
2K flat on FanDuel.
Yeah, That's appealing.
Switchy in the middle of the lineup. Yeah, I'd take that.
Their best hitter. Yeah, that's definitely appealing. So keep an eye on that one, guys, when the confirmed lineup comes out for the Orioles. If Santander's in it, little bump to them, even though they lose the DH. I think everything Gunn said about the spot with Strasburg makes a ton of sense there. Moving on, I think we said everything about that one. We've got our Yankees back at home with Jordan Montgomery on the hill. Sox coming in, the White Sox, coming in. Carlos Rodon starting the first game. Should be a really good series. Pretty even up in Vegas as far as the line goes. Yanks squeezing a little bit ahead with a 4.10 implied total, 3.99 for the White Sox. Low overall total for a game at Yankee Stadium, but two decent pitchers going. What do you like in this one in terms of the pitching?
Man, this one's gonna hurt. One of my favorite stacks and rules in DFS since the beginning of last year is play White Sox against lefties. And I think today's not going to be any different. Get White Sox there in Yankee Stadium. Jordan Montgomery, definitely beatable, and especially against righties since the beginning of last year, allowing just about a 280 average to righties and a near 2 home run per 9. I mean, this White Sox team, money versus bias. I got to stay with it. Tim Anderson, Abreu, Yerman Mercedes, all guys that even Andrew Vaughn is going to project extremely well for me in my bomb detector. So those will be short interest guys. Nick Madrigal batting 328 in his sample size so far against lefties. Yohan Moncada 285. I hate to do it, but I got to get into some White Sox ownership today. And then Carlos Rodon, a really solid pitcher. And we've seen some surprising names put up good games against the Yankees. Rodon he's better than a Rich Hill. He's better than some of these middle of the road guys. So I do think this is an upside spot, kind of like the Strasburg make a decision. You know, how comfortable is the field pitching against the Yankees? I do think the Yankees offense, I heard say they're overrated, right? They're not dropping 10 runs a game right now. They're winning games, but they're not blowing teams out. Even yesterday, Dane Dunning was putting up a solid stat line from fantasy. So I actually will probably have some Rodon in my Draftkings mix. Looking at the Yankee side, if I want to pick on Rodon, you know, I want some low K, maybe a little pop. Not a whole lot of that in the lineup. Maybe DJ, Luke Voigt, Judge, Gio, 1 through 4. After that, it gets a little bit rough to really sell yourself on. Gary Sanchez, Frazier, and Andujar Gardner all batting under 200 in the last 2 years against lefties. So it does fall off a cliff. So, yeah, give me a little Rodon, give me some White Sox stacks. I'll probably cherry pick the top 4 Yankees. I don't think I stack.
Yeah, and just looking at those Yanks that you named overall, Sanchez, Frazier, Andujar, all under the Mendoza line. Gardner exactly at the Mendoza line so far this year. Small sample still, of course. You know, we can forgive some of that. We don't care about batting average to a degree. So there's a little bit of that, in the wash. But those are ugly numbers. That just means these guys aren't putting the ball in play, which is why Gunn brings it up, in terms of how often the ball's just getting hit or making contact. A guy like Gary Sanchez still drives the ball when he manages to make contact. He's just not doing it enough for us. So that's the risk that you're taking. You're playing that home run game if you're rostering any Yankees. But yeah, you take Giancarlo Stanton out of this lineup, it's a pretty big hit to their overall upside. And the one thing I'll say is the strikeouts might be a little overrated so far this season. This active lineup, 20.7% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. Pretty decent, one of the better marks in the league. So they've been avoiding the strikeout, but they're just not creating a ton of runs. They're only a 172 collective team ISO. Looking at the White Sox on the other side, you mentioned their propensity for scoring runs against lefties. 142 WRC plus this year, 42% better than average as a team creating runs against lefties. Best mark in the league by a good margin. So yeah, I am worried about Jordan Montgomery. I like the White Sox side of this one, and we've got to move on. So the next game up on deck, we have the Brewers coming into Cincinnati. Adrian Hauser on the mound for the Brewers. Jeff Hoffman going for the Reds. 9-run total in this one. Looks like the visiting Brewers are favored by a little bit. 4.72 implied total for the Brew Crew. 4.38 for the home Reds. What are we liking in this one? I assume Hauser over Hoffman. Is that how you're seeing it?
I mean, if I had to, but probably I probably don't get to either one of them. I like this park. I think Great American Ballpark might be hidden in plain sight on a slate like this, and I do think this is a park that can compete with really Coors Field in terms of run produced. I think it has been a top home run park this year and going back to the beginning of last year. So there's plenty of opportunity for upside. I do like the Reds at home. going against Adrian Hauser. Definitely somebody I can pick on with lefties. The uncomfortable part of Hauser's game from a DFS standpoint is he is a high ground ball guy. So if he keeps the ball on the ground, it could kill some at-bats and kill some home run potential. And we got to have home runs tonight unless we're getting stolen bases. So I do worry about that, but I do like the Reds with some home cooking. Hoffman on the other side, a little bit of the opposite of what Hauser is. He'll lean to a little bit more of the fly ball, although he does have a 51% ground ball rate. Oh no, that's from 3 years ago. He does a 36% ground ball rate. So yeah, high line drive rate, and elevated fly ball rate. The Brewers are hard to get behind. They do have Yelich back in the mix, but I will have some Brewers exposure to try and attack that line drive fly ball rate. Hoffman's home run per 9 seems a little bit lucky, like egregiously lucky. And his whip is at 1.5. His whip has been at 1.5 or greater the last 3 seasons. I like high whip guys, especially fly ball high whip guys, because it could create the big inning. So I'll have some Brewers exposure for sure. And maybe Yelich is finding it after a stint on the IL. And this is a pretty cheap Brewers stack, all things considered, when you factor in the ballpark. Really just Colton Wong, who I can do without, and Yelich are the only bats over 4K. Everything else is pretty bargain bin for the park.
Colton Wong, price within 300 of Christian Yelich. That is something I didn't think I would say. Very strange little outlier there. Yeah, I like the Brewers side of things. The DK ownership is a little higher than I'd like to see, but the Fanduel ownership is almost non-existent outside of Yelich. Yelich is drawing 22%. Everybody else is under like 5%. So it's an interesting looking stack. A lot of lefties in that lineup, and should be a good spot for some power here going up against Hoffman. So I like that. The Reds are a go-to offense for me all year long, so I assume I'll have some Reds. Really like the looks of the ownership on them going up against Hauser here. They're not drawing anything, so I can definitely put together the offense on both sides. I doubt I'll have any shares of either of these pitchers when it really comes down to it. Next game, we've got Minnesota Twins going into Cleveland. Rivalry game. Randy Dobnak is who I have going for the Twins. It was a question mark when I put this together this morning, so if that changed, apologies. Got Tristan McKenzie, Dr. Sticks on the hill for the Indians. 9-run total in this one. Indians slightly favored, 4.73 implied total for the Indians, 4.38 for the Twins. You getting any of the offenses in this one, or is this I'm not looking really at either of these pitchers, I don't think. So are we looking at stacks in this game?
Yeah, no pitchers here. Dobnak getting called up. They had a doubleheader yesterday, so I'm sure they'll try and get all the juice they can out of Dobnak, but I wouldn't be surprised if he only goes 3 innings. McKenzie, I think he's another guy where the swing and strike rate makes you think he has potential, but the other underlying metrics, not what you want. So I guess if we're not going to be on the pitchers, we should probably explore the bats. Looking at it's 80 degrees. Progressive's fine. I'd take some shots here. Against Dobnak, I like to pick on him with lefties. Maybe Eddie Rosario, a little revenge bomb. He's just 2,400 on FanDuel. If Rosario bats second, I'll have some of that. Jose Ramirez, big price discrepancy between his FanDuel and Draftkings listing, 36 on FanDuel, 56 on DK. So I'm probably a little bit more susceptible to rostering Jose on FanDuel. And then on the Twins side, going against Tristan McKenzie. McKenzie allows a lot of power, but his strikeout rate is extremely high. So I'm looking for a power bat with low K rate, maybe a Donaldson, 21% K rate with some power. Anybody else? Maybe Max Kepler, just a 17% K rate against righties with over 500 slugging since the beginning of last year. So a couple power bats that can dance with the strikeout artist.
I like those calls. And yeah, McKenzie's a pitcher that I'm expecting big things from, and I think the Indians are as well. One of their higher rated prospects the last few years. Dealt with a few injuries in the minors, but still very young kid, still developing. I would normally be on this at 6,400 on FanDuel. I like the kid. He's just not projecting well for me, despite the 31.5% strikeout rate in 28 innings this season. Part of that is given his 1.64 whip and his 5.25 xFIP. But you mentioned the strikeouts on the other side. The Twins just have a few guys who are very, very good at limiting the strikeouts. You mentioned Kepler and his strikeout rate against righties. There's also Andrelton Simmons in there, Luis Arias, both contact hitters, but both guys who are very good at limiting strikeouts the other way. You do have some extreme high strikeout guys like Miguel Sano in there, of course, but I think there's enough in terms of being able to limit it that it just takes the upside away from McKenzie. So I don't think he's really on the board as a value play on either site. And he's kind of priced up on the DK side. I'm just noticing the DK price on Dobnak. Assuming you said probably only getting 3 innings out of him. For 4K, is there any value there? Because I know people are going to be thinking about it.
He hasn't thrown more than 3 innings this season on the big leagues. Maybe they try and stretch him for 5 if they can get it, because they did have a doubleheader yesterday. But I don't know. I think 4K is fun. I guess if you SB2 it, get 15 out of it, and or able to have your full core stack or your big boy bats on a Friday night. But I feel like that never works.
That's kind of my thinking about that as well. It's just you're going to a terrible pitcher, you're going to a bad spot. That's why these guys are priced that way when they come up that way for the most part. It's just, that's not a spot for me. If it was, Max Scherzer priced at 4,000 for some reason, then we're talking. But Randy Dobnak, not exactly Max Scherzer. Moving on, we've got one more before a quick break. We've got the Mets with Marcus Stroman on the hill, as far as I know, taking on the Marlins in Miami with Jordan Holloway going. 8-run total in this one, 3.79 for the Mets, 4.10 for the home Marlins favorite in this one. What do you like in here? Any love for either of these pitchers?
I guess I can make a case here for Marcus Stroman. Marlin Park rather plays a little bit more pitcher friendly. Looks like right now I see the roof projected open with some inward wind. I don't know how impactful the wind is actually because of the roof aspect. So maybe I'll do some research on that. But Stroman, high ground ball guy with a little bit of strikeout potential against this Marlins team off of some travel yesterday. I think the Mets were waiting on him. So I can get behind a little Stroman, not in love, but I can get behind a little bit of him, and maybe he gets to like a 25 DKP performance and scoops a win. Jordan Holloway projects poorly, but it is limited sample size. I got just under 17 innings total, with 16.2 of them being this year. And what we've seen is a sub 10% swing and strike rate and an Sierra and XFIP over 5. I don't think it's enough sample size for me to declare this or that, but I don't think I'm seeing like at least like a swinging strike rate like at 11% plus. Then I can start thinking maybe there's some reason to fear them. It is the Mets. Mets can underwhelm, but I do like maybe riding the hot hand on Jonathan VR. I've played him a couple times in the last week, and they put him in this leadoff spot. He's a guy that does have speed, but lately he's been flexing some power. So if he can find a nice balance and keep that K rate down, I do like him. If he leads off again, even if he's not homering, if he finds a way to get on base, still a bag or two, I think he'll be a formidable fill-in as a one-off. I don't think I'm going to stack the Mets, but I think 1 through 4 have the propensity to be in my player pool tonight.
Yeah, I like the call on VR there. You're getting a discount on a guy who brings you multi-category production. 2 years ago, 24 home runs, 40 stolen bases. That's nothing to sneeze at in 714 plate appearances. So if we're getting him back on track a little bit, which to your point, it looks like he has been this last week or so, up to a 183 ISO on the season. Creating runs still 1% worse than average, but in that leadoff spot with his wheels and with his power coming back, that'll change. So I like getting to that spot. Holloway's got some talent, I think. Just looking at the strikeout rate through the minors, he had a couple decent spots, but I think he's just a kid who needs some development time before coming up to the show last year for a cup of coffee, and then this year his highest level was high A. So he just needs some work. But he's got a 60 grade fastball in traditional scouting. He struggles with control and command. That's his big issue. So not a spot for me in terms of the pitcher. I definitely think we can roll some Mets bats here. I'm not as high on Stroman, just given the pricing. 91, I think, is a big ask on DK for a guy who's 18.5% strikeout rate so far this season. I like the spot going up against the Marlins, and I do think he could crack through what we expect strikeout-wise. It's just an uncomfortable price for me on Stroman. But I'll probably have at least a few mix-in shares. So, yeah. But I think the Mets, it might be a good spot. I know they're not favored in this one. That might be a sneaky good little bet to make. And, something I like to do when I'm making my bets is pull up oddshopper.com. I don't know if everybody out there has seen oddshopper.com yet, but it is a site that lays out every bet that you can possibly make for your online books. puts everything next together, gives you one of the best edges you can get in sports betting. It helps you shop for the best line. Betting lines change by the minute. They vary greatly depending on which book you're using. That's why you use OddsShopper. Lay everything out on a nice little dashboard and identify immediately where the best place to make that bet is. Stop guessing, start winning. Head over to oddshopper.com. That's where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, player and team futures, all of it updated in real time for every single sport that we cover, guys. It is the place to look for all of your betting needs. Moving on, we've got another swath of 4 games to talk about here. Got the Pirates going into Atlanta. The Andersons are facing one another. Tyler going for the Pirates, Ian going for the Braves. I don't think they're related as far as I know, but it's an Anderson family reunion either way. Braves are favored 4.95 implied total for the Braves, 3.65 implied total for the Pirates. I'm coming down on the Braves side of this one in terms of both the arm and the bats. How about you?
Yeah, only thing I know about the Andersons is they got tickets to the game. Okay, so a couple of people. Yeah. Anyway, where's EMAC? Good morning, EMAC. No, I can get behind some Ian Anderson, 25+% K rate against lefties last 2 years. Pirates usually throw out a lot of switchies or a lot of lefties, but he sustains that 25% against righties as well. 10.5K is a tall ask. So it's not an aggressive stance on Ian Anderson, but I will have some. Maybe his ERA is overperforming versus his SIERA and XFIP, but his SIERA is not like horrendous, just a kiss over 4. I think you can come backwards. You like to see that walk rate go down just 1% as well. The reason we like to pick on the Pirates is they just have no power. A whole line of batting are slugging essentially 400-ish or less. So I will have a little Ian Anderson, Tyler Anderson, however, looking a lot better so far this year against righties, but the last couple seasons, not as great strikeout-wise against righties, so maybe some regression due for him. Maybe some of that is Coors Field effect. Braves, I just bet on their talent sometimes against lefties. Acuna, Ozuna, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, all guys you can chip in a chair just about any day against any lefty. So give me a little bit of the Braves here. And I don't think I get to Pirates, but I do like the SunTrust Park here and there for some offensive upside. And I will say the Pirates, their top 3 projected, Frazier, Kevin Newman, Brian Reynolds, do all have a decent batting average. I think batting average is a little underrated in DFS. You get those guys on base a couple times, maybe they get aggressive on the base pass, and then Stallings, the guy that I do prefer. I guess against righties yesterday we saw, I guess I like him against lefties just the same. He has some power. We saw it yesterday, but it's not something I bank on a lot. So a couple of Pirates here, but I probably will have some Brave stacks. They just seem like when they're at full strength that they have the propensity. The Braves are a weird team where like you watch them day to day and you feel like they're overrated, but then you look up and they're like top 5 in homers, and we know they'll get aggressive on the bases. So I don't know. This is a funky team.
Yeah, and it's a team that has done a lot for DFS players over the last year and change too. So it's definitely a spot I want to get to. 180 team ISO against lefties. The strikeout rate's actually a little higher than I would have expected for them against lefties. And the run creation's a little bit lower than it was in previous seasons. But I think there's just enough talent here, and I don't think much of the opposing pitcher. And what I really like is on our free top stacks board today, they are ranking out with positive leverage. So I really like the idea of getting to that. And it's one of those days where the top-ranked team is at Coors Field, so you kind of know that you're looking at heavy ownership there. But then a lot of the other teams, as you start going down the list, are ranked very similarly in terms of their probability of success. So that's the kind of day I just love to jump over to the leverage column and just look at, all right, if these teams are all around the same probability of coming up as the top couple options, then let me jump to the teams that nobody's going to be on. And that's what the leverage tool gives you. That's what the top stacks tool gives you. Free on the site today, guys. Go in there and check it out. But the Braves are definitely rating out pretty well there. I like the call as well on the top of the Pittsburgh lineup there too. I think Brian Reynolds is a little bit of an underrated hitter. Hits from both sides of the plate. Nobody going to be on him. Super cheap as well. And then Newman and Frazier, you get multi-position on them on FanDuel. You can move them around a little bit. So I think there's something interesting there. But I think I'm going to be too heavy on Ian Anderson at 8,800 on FanDuel to be rostering too many Pirates today. Moving on, let's see what we've got up next. Got the Rays with Tyler Glasnow, our first probably true ace, I think, that we've talked about today. We mentioned Nola, but he's in a tougher matchup. Glasnow, well, maybe not. Glasnow going to be in Dunedin against the Blue Jays with Anthony Kay on the hill. 9-run total. That's down a little bit for this park from what we've seen. 501 implied total for the Rays, 4.09 implied total for the Blue Jays. So the Rays heavily favored as the visiting team here. You liking Glasnow in this park, or are we a little scared off by Coors East here?
Yeah, definitely. Like the park is intimidating. I think I was in the same spot with like Garrett Cole earlier this season. Like if you're playing Tyler Glasnow, like you're not projecting a lot of balls in play, right? He's a strikeout artist, almost 40% to both sides of the plate so far. So I wouldn't let the park get me off him completely. I do think there's plenty of there's an ample amount of strikeouts in the Blue Jays lineup, and because of Glasnow's insane numbers, like he'll raise that average up even higher for the Blue Jay side. So I'm going to be there on Glasnow, but I would definitely have to hedge it in my back pocket. So like if I had 30% Glasnow exposure, I'd probably have 5% Blue Jay stacks just to kind of hedge that ownership. And then, Anthony Kay is probably not somebody I'm going to roster.
Yeah, I don't have any need for Anthony Kay in this game. He's a pitcher that, I think there's upside there maybe in the future, but definitely not in this spot in this park. Glasnow is interesting for the fact that he's pulling under 10% ownership projection on Fanduel right now. So I do like that. It's a big price to pay, but you're talking about one of the best strikeout pitchers in the game right now, 38.6% strikeout rate over 57 and a third innings this year. Excellent marks across the board. I'm just a little worried about the park, and it's a lineup I don't really love to tangle with. I give this Blue Jays lineup a little bit of respect. So I might be diving into those Blue Jays stacks as well. I love the ownership on them on the other side. You're throwing them up against, I wish Glasnow was at like 15-20% ownership. Maybe he'll get there later in the day. But I really like getting to all these Blue Jays bats at under 1% ownership pretty much across the board. So that's kind of a luxury today. So I'll definitely be looking at that. Moving on this one, we've got the Astros going into Arlington facing the Texas Rangers. Tyler Ivey is our third Tyler in a row for the visiting teams, going up against Kyle Gibson, 9-run total in this game. Another one where the visiting team is favored, 4.75 implied total for the visiting Astros, 4.35 for the Rangers. I don't know much about Tyler Ivey. I do know a lot about Kyle Gibson. I don't think I want to roster either one of them. You seeing this one any differently?
Looking at Tyler Ivey's minor league stuff, so far this year, there's really no sample size to get behind, just 6 innings. But 2019, 52 innings, a 154 average allowed, under 1 whip, 68 strikeouts in those 52 innings. So looks like in his pedigree and his DNA is a strikeout pitcher that should be pretty solid. But I don't like to bet on pitchers in their first, couple first cups of coffee in the majors. Kind of seen it as a this season example. Logan Gilbert, Seattle Mariners, projects really, really well for them as one of their higher prospects. When you get called up to the show, it just hits different. So it takes a while to find it. You talked about Dobnak being 4K, Ivy being 4,800. I'm sure there's going to be some guys that put those two in a DraftKings lineup and just have a blast. But there's probably not enough here for me to love it. I would be a little bit more prone to maybe picking on the Rangers than some of the other cheap pitcher spots, because the Rangers, they have that no-hit potential just kind of baked into their projections right now, but it's unknown territory. We really don't know what to expect out of Ivy, because even the sample size numbers we have are pre-COVID baseball. So probably not going to get there. Kyle Gibson, we know what we're probably to expect. I also think Kyle Gibson, little Kluber-esque in his numbers, being that his ERA doesn't really agree with his Sierra and XFIP. Astros not a high strikeout team from the big boys in the top half, and the bottom half about 22% or less against righties. So I probably won't push the issue on Gibson. If it was a more league average type team other than the Astros, I definitely like that 7.1K price tag. But I might put him in the pool and cap him at like 6% just to see what happens, because I do think Kyle Gibson's worth a 7.1K shot, but I don't love the matchup for him. And if the roof ends up being open in this game, I think it probably makes me less interested.
Yeah, that's going to be an important factor to watch for as we get through the afternoon for sure, is the roof status. I do like him better at 7,100 on DK than I'd like him at 81 as the single pitcher on FanDuel. I think it's to your point, maybe worth a few shots and a little bit of risk to take on there. Going up against an excellent Astros lineup, not a good spot, but that is a fair price for Kyle Gibson here. So that's at least worth considering keeping an eye on. Moving on to one where I don't think we're going to need to consider or keep an eye on either pitcher, but maybe you've got a different opinion. Tigers with Jose Urena going into Kansas City. Royals have Mike Minor on the mound. Royals favored 4.78 implied total. Terrible Tigers, 3.82 implied total. Any love for Mike Minor, who has been a little bit better this year, I guess, going up against this just atrocious Tigers lineup that's been awful. 33.3% strikeout rate for the team against lefties. 0.081 ISO as a team against lefties this year.
Man, the metrics don't line up, man. I don't like to play like I guess he dropped 29 against the White Sox. How?
Exactly,
dude. It's like he's either getting you single digits or 20. He dropped 27 against the Tigers in less than 6 innings last time as well. So I'm definitely not a point chaser guy. But the Tigers are bad enough to where I probably throw them in the mix, cap them at 10%. I'd probably lower that number. It's not saying I would play 10%, just saying I would never have more than 10% tonight. But that number could drop down to maybe 6 or 7. The reason being because I'm not excited to play a lot of these Tigers. I would flip that and say, there are some Tigers in this lineup with decent batting averages and slugging rates against lefties. I think people sleep on that. Jonathan Scopa, batting 268 in the last 2 years against lefties, slugging over 500. Miggy, Nico Goodrum, guys like that. Even Wilson Ramos, 2,100 on Fanduel. People don't give up that spot for catcher. So there are some opportunities there, but at the same time, it's still the Tigers. Kauffman Stadium's going to play more pitcher friendly here. So 7,500, I would say there's a range of outcomes where 20 fantasy points happens. So yeah, he's in the pool, but he's not an aggressive play and he's not a min play. He's just a max play.
Yeah, and I think, probably fairly priced for this matchup for being Mike Minor and everything we know about Mike Minor. So, yeah, I'll leave him in the pool as well. I'm probably going to have around a similar cap. If I end up with 5% against the field's 10% on FanDuel, I'll probably be okay with that. I don't think I want to go much beyond that. But in crunches, I would probably leave it out to like 10%, like you said, just to be able to at least capture some lineups and throw them into my sorting process. On the Tigers side of things, I wrote them up actually 2 days ago, and they kind of came through with 6 runs for me. I'm not sure I'm seeing the same thing on this one, but I would throw Eric Haas into the mix as yet another catcher option. It looks like the projected lineup has 3 catchers in it, which is kind of interesting for DK play.
That's wild.
Just a weird little thing here. But Haas does have some power upside, so he could be a sneaky little catcher play over there. And then, mix and match through the hitters if you're going to the Tiger stack. Nobody else is going to be there, really, so you don't have to worry about ownership too much. Maybe Johnny Scope is drawing a little bit for his power upside. I think that gets us pretty much through this one. On the Royals side of things, are you looking at any stacks there going up against Urena? I guess we should hit that real quick before we move on.
Picking on Urena, I do like lefties. It looks like he hasn't given up a bomb to a lefty yet this year, but it's not. It looks more like a coincidence than anything. His metrics in terms of hard contact, fly ball rate, line drive rate, pretty in line with last year's, maybe a lower fly ball rate. So I do think the homers to lefties are coming. Carlos Santana is somebody that people may not realize the season that he's having so far in terms of fantasy perspective. Like he's up there in homers right now. I think he has eight homers, and he'll steal a base here and there. He stole a base a couple games ago. I didn't know he could do that. So a nice little switchy there. Whit Merrifield also a guy that can get you a solid on base percentage, steal a bag or two. A couple bats here, but it's nothing I'm running to. 4.8 implied run total. That might bleed over 5. Usually a team with over 5 I can get to. And the Tigers bullpen is probably bad enough to pick on. This might be one of those under-owned stack. I don't want to say under-owned, but one of those stacks at the end of the day, you're like, oh man, how'd the Royals drop 12? Well, it's the Tigers pitching staff. That's how.
Yep, exactly. And that's why I wanted to make sure we at least touched on it. They do rank pretty well on our top stacks tool, which is free today. You guys can get in there and check it out. And to your point, I think Carlos Santana is a great call. Hits from both sides of the plate, 8 home runs so far this year, the 2 stolen bases, 250, 402 on base percentage, 450 slugging, 200 ISO so far this season. Had a terrible year last year, so people kind of forgot about him. But 2 years ago, 34 home runs, 4 stolen bases, and 686 plate appearances with a 281, 397, 515, 234 ISO. This is a guy who gets on base like crazy, creates runs, hits for power, the occasional stolen base even that we didn't even really realize. I really like Carlos Santana there. I would be getting to the top end of the Royals lineup. Gets a little funky toward the bottom, although Michael A. Taylor always is one of those oddball DFS players who you look at and say, oh, Michael Taylor scored 35 points tonight. How'd that happen? Kind of similar to what you were saying about the team. Moving on, we've got to talk about the Awesemo Hall of Fame. This is one of my favorite parts of my day when I'm doing our customer support shifts. I go through all the, and there's not many of them because we do such a good job, but occasionally we get some complaints and stuff, right? Or some people with issues about their subscriptions. I go through all of those, respond to all of those, and I leave all the Hall of Fame, the I qualified, I won this, because it makes me feel good. I leave those for last because I get to respond to these folks and congratulate them. So we've got another big swath of winners. Tyler's got it up on the screen, so we'll go through a couple of them, shout them out real quick. Solid showdown slate for, I have no idea who this was. P. Hanley, 214. Looks like he took down 13K, beat out our own Steve the Buzzard, the Colts. Got another one coming up. Can't read this one, but congratulations to whoever it is. We need non-blurry photos, guys. Another one coming up. Chris Giordani, our own Chris Topper Squints out there, had another nice one. First, second, and third, each in a different tourney. Good old hand-built single bullet in the $18 featured GPP 305 times his investment. Not a bad return on investment. Nidu, Najee Swag 83, looks like he had a nice little double dip there. Got Caccioletta, had a nice one. Wow, very nice looking day in the piggy bank. And that's what's great about these things too. We see wins that mean something to people. It doesn't have to be a gigantic $2,000, $20,000, $50,000 win. A couple $100 means a lot to some people, and these are great wins to see. Anytime you're beating 100,000 people at anything, you've done a great job. I don't care what the prize is. So we've got Mike Venderosa, Ironman Kev, had a great night there. We've got Scripps, oh boy, another nice night. $150 winning the pinch hit on Fanduel. And let's see, this last one I cannot read because there's no screen name on it. Oh, B. Henry. Looks like B. Henry took something down as well. So great job, everybody out there for the Hall of Fame. What you want to do, the instructions are on the screen. You need to come in the top 3 in a tournament that has more than 5,000 entries in it. Tweet it at Awesemo, HOF, Awesemo Hall of Fame. That'll get you in here. We're going to reuse your screenshot, tweet it out to the masses, and brag about your win. Then you email us behind the scenes, support@awesemo.com. Let me know that you've tweeted it out. Let me know about your win. And my team or me will get back to you with a promo code, set you up with a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Pretty great prize. Adds to your win. Awesemo Hall of Fame, Awesemo HOF. Got to steamroll through these last 5 games. We got plenty of time to do it, though. Cubbies going into St. Louis with Kyle Hendricks on the hill. Carlos Martinez going for the Cards, 8.5 total. 4.41 implied total for the Cubbies, 4.18 for the home Cards. What are you liking in this one, Gun?
Man, Carlos Martinez is the gift that keeps on giving. 5 Ernie's last game at home against Colorado. Definitely hasn't been the same pitcher that he used to be. A couple games where he's flirted with 20 DKP, but I do think I'm going to have a couple of these Cubs bats against them. Overall, though, Busch Stadium, not a park that I run to on a big slate to try and get that offense. Both teams, meager totals, 4.5 or less. But a guy like, Jock Peterson, if he leads off, sit on that first pitch fastball, send it out the park, 2,500 on FanDuel. I'll get to that. Chris Bryant's having a really, really good year. And then on the Cardinal side against Kyle Hendricks, Hendricks will allow some power to righties, more of a contact pitcher, no velo to speak of, but maybe a Goldie and Arenado, somebody like that. Gets into one. And also, I talk about these guys that have power problems and don't strike people out versus power hitters that do strike out a lot. Maybe a guy like, Harrison Bader, his power numbers are not as high as I would like it, but I would sift through this lineup and see if we do have an opportunity to neutralize a high K rate with Kyle Hendricks' lack of K rate against righties. But this is more of a probably cherry pick situation for me today, but I do think the Cubs at least have stack potential, meaning that there's probably 4 or 5 names. If I had a lineup of 4 or 5 of these names, I'd be okay. Jock, Bryant, Baez, Rizzo, Contreras, even Ian Happ, all guys that I wouldn't hate in a lineup if I had them against a C-Mart.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're one of the more appealing looking stacks in terms of the top stacks tool, where you're getting positive leverage because they're pretty expensive to pay for as a full stack on DK, especially. So that's going to complicate things, but it can hopefully suppress the ownership to the point where we can roster them as a stack. So I'm with you on that one. Looking ahead, we've got, let's see what is next. We've got the Diamondbacks going into Colorado, the Coors game. Seth Frankoff, the unfortunate victim, going for the Diamondbacks. Herman Marquez pitching at home for the Rockies. Marquez is a guy I talk about from time to time when he looks appealing to me in a home matchup where nobody's going to him. It's a dice roll that I'm willing to make from time to time. It's not looking like it's getting there in my projection for me today. He hasn't also been pitching all that well this year, not really himself. So I'm going to stay away from the pitching. I'm not going to throw any of my weird darts on this one. It's probably going to be all about bats at the Coors game, but they're not the greatest offenses here. Any love for this Coors game, or is it one where you're maybe letting the public get there and you're looking elsewhere on such a big slate?
Yeah, I do like the game. The first thing that sticks out to me, I don't know if you've seen this, but it looks like wind models projected blowing out to right center 17 miles an hour, which is, if Coors doesn't need any help. So if that's the case, that's definitely something that could juice these runs even more. I think that the thing that stuck out to me the most when we looked at the Awesemo tools, you mentioned that top stack tool is free today. Right now, Colorado sitting at 19% on a 15-game slate. Definitely feels like, there's plenty of air and opportunity for someone else to be the better stack. So if that sits at 20%, man, I don't know if I want to dedicate 20% of my lineups to be even with the field on a 15-game Friday nighter. So I don't know that I'll allow myself to get there at 20. But we'll watch the elements as the day goes by, and maybe these confirmed lineups change my mind. But I would be more on the Rocky side of things. But the D-backs are just fine. They got Ketel Marte back in the mix. We talked about him yesterday. Didn't really have that big game, but Eduardo Escobar stayed hot. David Peralta has been starting to turn it on a little bit. So they are stackable. I also think that they are double-edged swords, meaning they can steal some bases if they do get on. Herman Marquez, still a guy that I respect, but against lefties, he leaks a lot more than righties. Like, all of his good metrics this year are pretty much against righties, and all of his bad stuff's against lefties. 20% or less K rate the last 3 years against lefties. An elevated average allowed, 260 plus the last 3 years, almost 300 this year, and the walk rate's up there, 14%, almost double what we're used to seeing out of him. So there is definitely some potential to let these lefties get on base, and then D-backs are going to come at you switchy and lefty heavy. We've seen them roll out almost all lefty lineups earlier this season against Max, and that might be more of the same today. I got Nick Ahmed, the only righty in my projected lineup, and I think he had a big game in Coors during that last stint. So it's a tough spot for me to get behind Marquez. I already think the field might be a little bit more Cinderella on him at that price, but I don't think I'm getting there on a 15-gamer.
Yeah, the DK price is at least interesting, right? If you wanted to take some shots with him, I wouldn't totally hate that over there. I was looking at the Fanduel price, but like I said, he doesn't get the appealing projection that he sometimes does for me in this spot. And I think, to your point, one righty in the lineup facing him potentially with all the switch hitters and the lefties there. So that's going to be a tricky spot for him. Might be, just given the overall field ownership, though, one of those spots where it's a Coors game. It's got some appeal, top 2 ranked teams in terms of probability of success, but so much ownership, so much negative leverage that on a 15-gamer, I might start looking in different spots. I'll have some, but I think I'm going to be under the field on Coors ownership. We've got to keep it moving, though. We've got the Oakland A's going into Los Angeles, or Anaheim at least, to play the Angels. James Kaprelian, former Yankee farmhand, going for the Athletics, taking on Jose Quintana, former Cub. Basically, fairly even up in Vegas. 4.43 implied total for the A's, 4.67 for the Angels. So relatively close competition here. You liking anything in this one in terms of the arms or the bats?
I mean, Shohei Ohtani, he's a play every single day. Even without Trout, I do like the top 4 of this Angels lineup: Iglesias, Rendon, Jared Walsh. I'd be curious to see if someone gets a day off after a doubleheader yesterday. I think Ohtani only played one of those doubleheader games, so maybe he's fine to go. But this guy's a machine. He pitched a couple days ago, and next day there's a doubleheader. His bat's available in the first game, plays, and then he's right back at it at home. So, but the top four of the Angels, and I would also maybe look at Justin Upton. He's having a solid season thus far. That's probably the extent of my short interest on the Angels. I'm not overly buying into them. I definitely like Ohtani to fall where he will as a one-off, a nice little late night hammer one-off to back up some of my lineups that have already done most of their damage by this first pitch. On the Athletic side, going against Quintana, contact lefty historically, but this year finding strikeouts, almost a over 27% K rate against righties, 46% against lefties. That's got to be like a couple of hitters. Yeah. So yeah, I think his strikeouts are a little above his head. But even with those strikeouts, he's allowing a 338 average right now to righties, a 1.5 home run per 9, and a high walk rate. His stats make no sense to me, Terry. I don't understand what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Not really projecting well. I think the price is a little interesting at 6,200. I could maybe take some shots, but he's not a guy I like to take shots with anyway. And I agree with you. I think the numbers that we're seeing are just some wonky noise in the small sample, 25 and a third innings. So, I'm not really taking shots there. I don't think I'm taking shots with Kaprelian on the other side either. A guy I do want to take some shots with, though, here, I think, is Trevor Bauer on the road going into San Francisco. Mostly a pitcher's park, taking on Alex Wood and the Giants. The Dodgers with a 3.72 implied total in that one. Giants with a 3.36 going up against Bauer. Is Bauer the top pitcher on the slate here?
Yeah, probably. The Giants' offense is better than public perception, but put him in a plus park. I think Bauer is still a guy that usually on his worst days, even days where he's getting 4 earnings, he's still getting you mid-20s to knocking on the door 30. So yes, and I also don't hate some shots at Alex Wood. It's not comfortable to pitch against the Dodgers, but we saw last night Merrill Kelly dropped almost a 30 bomb on him. So it is in the range of outcomes for Alex Wood to continue this solid start to the season. 3.17 Sierra, 2.89 xFIP. He is outperforming his ERA is outperforming his advanced metrics, but it's still not like bad advanced metrics. Like these are really good numbers. So I almost don't hate the idea of throwing these two at each other, but 10K for Wood and 11.9 for Bauer makes it a lot harder than just, it's easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure. Doesn't look like either one of the offenses is pulling any kind of ownership of any significance. I'd be willing to take some shots, I think, with the Dodgers going back the other way against Wood, even a depleted Dodgers lineup. Still relatively good. Not crazy expensive on Fanduel, more expensive on DK. Take like 15 seconds and tell me about the Giants as a contrarian stack going against Bauer. Any love for that?
I mean, they're one of the league leaders in runs, right, or homers. They're the number one team in this division, so maybe this is a statement series for them to show it against Bauer. Yastrzemski, I like his bat. Belt. Tachman, if he's leading off, gets on base. He does have some stolen base potential. We know that. And Buster Posey, he's looking a little like older Buster Posey. So it's. I don't know if it's an upside stack, but it's a very affordable stack, all things considered, especially on FanDuel.
Yeah, affordable. Nobody going to be there given the ownership on Bauer the other way. You're talking about taking shots against one of the best pitchers in the league with a team that has a 28.3% strikeout rate against righties, which is worst in the league. But you mentioned the power, 183 team ISO, 46 home runs so far, one of the league leading teams against righties. That is where we'll leave that one, because we've got one more game to talk about real quick. We've got the Mariners with Chris Flexen, kind of a targetable pitcher for me, going into San Diego, taking on Chris Paddock, who I think is maybe a little underrated in this spot. 7.5 run total, 4.46 implied for the Pods, 3.14 for the Mariners. Take us wherever you want to go.
Yeah, Mariners joining the Rangers, joining the Indians. No hit potential is there with the Mariners. It feels a little bit more palpable because of some of the names that we've seen, like Spencer Turnbull, good pitcher, but So I'd probably say Chris Paddock's a little bit better. So I do think, Chris Paddock at home here. This Mariners lineup, a couple of these guys in this projected lineup, Mitch Haniger, Kyle Lewis, Tom Murphy, Jacob Nottingham, all those guys have 30+% K rates against righties, and we're mixed in with a bunch of newbies and guys I don't even have enough sample size on to tell you their K rate. So I do think Chris Paddock, maybe even on Fanduel, 6.3. That'll be kind of a key to a fun like Coors, maybe Reds, Bats stack, something like that. And 86 on DraftKings is not off limits for me either. One thing about Paddock we don't love so far is his inability to go that deep. Just 4 innings last game against the Cardinals and 84 pitches. But only 1 earning allowed there. If we look back to before that little stretch there, a couple 5-inning spots. So you might worry about how long he can go, but this is probably the softest landing spot he's had all year, and Mariners will certainly give him an opportunity to get right. So I do like having some shares of Paddock, but I'm also going to taper these expectations. I'll keep an eye on his ownership projection because pitchers against the Mariners often go over-owned. Yeah, based on their skill level, but I do like the prices I'm seeing, and I like the strikeout potential in this Mariners lineup.
Yeah, and you mentioned the big concern is, are we going to get that 6-inning quality start out of him on FanDuel for that extreme discount 6,300 price? I think we could get a nice point performance from him, even if he only goes 5, hopefully gets the win. You're talking about a strikeout-heavy Mariners lineup, like you mentioned, losing the DH going into a National League park. I like everything about the spot. The ownership is creeping up there already. I think it's going to go even higher. So that'll be the main consideration with this one. If I do get over the field on him, which is at least a consideration, I'll probably have some hedge stacks with the Mariners coming back the other way because I don't totally hate some of the power and the speed upside in parts of that lineup. So I can get to little bits and pieces of it, and maybe a little bit of Padres going the other way against a pretty targetable Chris Flexen there. But I think that brings us basically to the end here. Gunn, any final thoughts to throw at the crowd before we say goodbye?
No, it's going to be a wild Friday night. Bomb detectors loving Jared Walsh, William Contreras, Eric Haas, your boy, Andrew Vaughn. So for you bomb detector fans, that's up there. Otani's right up there with Walsh as well.
There you go. I haven't looked at my home run model yet, so my home run pick will be in my article later on, guys. Check that out sometime around probably 2 or 3 o'clock. It'll be published. We've got a ton of stuff coming up through the rest of the day. Coming up at 2 o'clock, we've got the NHL Strategy Show with Cliffy and Josh. 5 p.m. gets you the NBA tip-off with Kayla, Spags, and Ben. 6 p.m. MLB Live Before Lock with Aiton and Max. 7 o'clock, the NBA Deeper Dive with Lofty, Ryan, and Alex. 8 o'clock, NBA Live Before Lock with Greg and Eric. 3 shows for 1 game for the NBA. Talk about content, you guys. Like it, subscribe, hit the subscribe button so you get all those notifications about all these upcoming shows, guys. With that, we're out of here. We appreciate the hang. Good luck tonight.